Hi, consumer behavior students. We are doing chapter 6, moving right along in the semester. This is called the self, mind, gender, and body, and how this relates back to our consumer behavior. So the self-concept strongly influences our consumer behavior, whether we realize it or not, and certainly as we go through these slides, you'll get a sense of what that means. So self-concept, it summarizes the beliefs a person holds about his or her own attributes and how he or she evaluates the self on these qualities. So there's dimensions that include content, positivity, intensity, and stability. Collective self is derived from our identity from a social group. So, we're in a family, for instance, and what's our identity there? That we're maybe a sister or a mother or an aunt or a niece. Identity is a category label which a consumer self associates. So we all associate to something. Some are stable, like up in this definition of self-concept. So stable means things that don't change, like I'm Caucasian and I'm a mother, versus something that's temporary, which could be, you're a college student and you're a Prius driver. Well, you're not going to be that forever. Maybe the Prius driver you will be, but hopefully not a college student forever. So there's some things in our identity that are shifting on a daily basis or yearly basis, and some things that are just stable and that will not change. Self-esteem, what is it? It refers to the positivity of a person's self-concept. People with low self-esteem expect that they will not perform very well, and they will try to avoid things like embarrassment, failure, and rejection. Social comparison is evaluating our appearance compared to people depicted in artificial images. So we know who they are. Something in a magazine, in a commercial. Our society's done a lot better, certainly, by depicting real women, for example, for different companies, instead of, airbrush starving skeletons. So we're getting better at that, but we definitely compare ourselves to people in these images in the world, and that's where we get our social comparison. So here's an interesting study that Sara Lee has done. So this is where you're using consumer behavior as a consumer packaged good company. So Sara Lee makes delicious cakes and pies, but they found that consumers with self-esteem preferred portion-controlled snacks items because they felt they lacked self-control. I think what I'm trying to say here is not with self-esteem, with lower self-esteem. I'm missing that word in there. But so, they tapped into a market that, hey, I want something sweet. I know if I get the whole cheesecake, I'm going to eat it. But if I have some controlled portions, it helps me feel better because of that lack of self-control, but it satisfies that urge at the same time. So certainly, Sara Lee has done their research. So there's real and ideal selves. And our ideal self is our concept of how we would like to be. Our actual self is that realistic appraisal of the qualities that we have. So products, we can think of examples of products that help us reach our ideal self, like maybe Orange Theory or different gyms that are trying to show us that, you can get to that ideal shape if you join this gym, if you use this protein bar, if you take this protein supplement. Be consistent. Then there's companies that are keep us consistent with our actual self as well. And that could just be, maintenance, whether it be a hair color or a toothpaste or something related to our beauty or our what I want to say, our maintenance of our beauty. Impression management means that we work to manage what others think of us. That's something that shows us in a good light. So I think of nothing but social media when I think of impression management, because it's not realistic that every moment of your life you're smiling and you have your tongue out and parts of your body are showing in a certain way. We're only going to post the best pictures of ourselves in the most wonderful places, having the best time. But that's also an example of a brand name versus private label. We might buy private label for ourselves, but maybe if we know we're having a special occasion or people over, we might buy like a brand name product. Like, think in terms of, alcohol or something. I'll drink basic wine, but if I'm having a party, I'm gonna, buy something a little bit nicer than your, Kirkland brand, red wine, for example. Multiple selves, fantasy, self-induced shift in consciousness. So there's this fantasy self we probably have, and many products play into this, of, where we want to be, on a cruise, on a Hawaiian island, whatever the case may be. So one of my favorite ads that are out there, and you've got to watch this YouTube video, Amazon does a great job, where they take a person in their basic life, it's usually in some dark room, and they show them looking through their Amazon account and maybe ordering something like a leather jacket or a chair or something, and the fantasy of having what that looks like in their apartment, and then they get back to reality. But that's like fantasy induced. Companies do this a lot, so that we can see ourselves in a different light. Virtual makeovers, touch-up photos, or we see what we look like in certain makeup. So for instance, Sephora or Mary Kay on their websites allow you to kind of see what you look like with a certain shade of makeup or lipstick, or even Warby Parker does it with glasses. Okay, here's a big word for you. Okay, dramaturgical perspective. We are actors playing different roles. Okay, we talked about this in the beginning of the semester. We do play different roles in our life, even though you don't think of it that way. But marketers know this, and they kind of intercept us in those different roles of our life. So I play the role of, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, I'm a friend. So what does that look like for marketers, and how do they intercept me with products? There's a torn self, and that might be the struggle retaining an authentic self in a different culture. A lot of people that are immigrants that come here, they struggle with their, where they're from, and being authentic to that culture versus coming here to America and being submerged into our culture, and how to deal with that balance. Okay, self-consciousness. So public self-consciousness is that we're aware of oneself and how others perceive us. High self-motivators, again, remember I told you we're going to have a lot of concepts here. So a lot of this information you're aware of, we're just putting definitions to it. Like high self-motivators, we're aware of how they present themselves in social environments which can affect purchase choices. Okay, so there's a lot of selves out there is what we're saying. There's that public self, and then there's that the high self monitor is presenting yourself again in an environment and knowing that your purchases can affect that persona. You all know what a selfie is. They talk about that in the textbook. And then the empty self, they also talk about is, so why do we take so many pictures of ourselves? Um, they describe in the textbook that it's a shifting inward with the focus on self, which indirectly leads to a decline in family, community, and traditions. So I don't want you to think just because you take pictures of yourself all the time that that's what that means, that, you know, our society is deteriorating. But what they're saying is that you're looking too much inward instead of outward. So instead of taking the camera lens and focusing in tight, pull it out a little bit and look at the big world around you rather than your small bubble, is what the textbook is talking about. So self-consciousness falls into a lot of places. Self-product congruence. I always find this to be interesting, and I think it's somewhat true. Consumers demonstrate their values through what they purchase. So self-image congruence model is that we choose products with certain attributes that represent ourselves. They match our own aspects of ourselves. So I want a sleek little sports car. I maybe collect something or wear a certain kind of shoes or clothing or live in a particular type of neighborhood. So different things that we have, and I want you to think about it. It could be beauty products, it could be your car, it could be what you wear, but these attributes in some ways reflect ourselves. So in the picture here, I have a Jeep, but it's product usage equals self-image. Okay, what image are you projecting? Are we what we buy? Social identity as individual consumption behaviors. The question is, who am I now? And the answer is, to some extent, your possessions. So, you know, maybe years ago, when I came from Pennsylvania, I had a big old house sitting on an acre in a particular type of neighborhood, and that was what my life was then, raising my kids. Here I come down to Florida. You know, as you get older, you don't have as many possessions anymore. You're kind of like, I'm done with that. Your generation is definitely less into collecting things and committing to things like that. Hence, why, you know, people aren't necessarily purchasing homes, and we're doing a lot of things where we're in a sharing economy, where we're doing more Airbnb, we're doing more Uber and ride share and things like that. We're not into collecting things, or your generation isn't anymore. You're more of a free society. Symbolic self-completion theory. People who have an incomplete self-definition complete their identity when they acquire and display symbols they associate with in that role. So maybe it's not you, maybe it's a parent, an aunt or uncle, maybe a friend, maybe a brother or sister that definitely are kind of collectors of something, like they need to feel identified with something to complete their identity. I'll use my brother Michael as an example. He is a huge fan of Villanova basketball, to the point of, like, he plans his vacations around it. He has all kinds of, he also went to Villanova. You know, everything he's wearing, whether it's a hat or a t-shirt, they name their dog Nova. I mean, he has the bumper stickers. He has, you know, the mugs and the everything that says Villanova. It's like his persona. And a lot of it is because he connects it maybe with my dad, who went to these games with him, and that kind of thing. So you may know someone like my brother Michael, but this is a real theory, and it's called the symbolic self-completion theory. Shut up! Let's go! Let's go outside. Come on. Go outside. Over here. Go. Okay, next up is the extended self. We use external objects to define our extended self. We create things like digital selves, like avatars on our social media. We also become fanatics about certain cherished items. Maybe you have a collection of something, Beanie Babies, sports memorabilia, hats. Shoes are a very big thing for women and certainly men, but it helps form our identity, whether we realize it or not. I'm pointing this out. But there is a real connection with shoes and have been over the years, such as movies that have been made from Cinderella, The Wizard of Oz, Sex and the City. They're all about a shoe obsession. So I love the sign here. It says, Cinderella is the proof that a new pair of shoes can change your life. Yes, I believe that. I love shoes. I'm not the only one here, but there is some deep-seated thing going on here with shoes in our society. Okay, so for reflection. Okay, so advertising can also utilize consumer self-esteem in promoting products by offering the product as a remedy to low self-esteem. Because we know that that is something that is happening as marketers, self-esteem advertising is really big now, especially with COVID-19, whether it's stay at home or exercise at home or be healthy mentally. But products provide us a remedy, and I have two great examples here. The first one is Nike, and it shows, so take a look at them so you get a better understanding, but I'll give a small description. So the Nike one is a girl that's, going to different exercise classes and feeling like intimidated by the people around her that might be in better shape or have better balance or be more athletic or they're better looking, whatever. And then she builds her self-esteem up throughout, and of course she's wearing Nike products. The second one is a secret ad that was run during the Super Bowl this year that was great. And it's, you watch it, you think it's two football players that, male football players, of course. And then all of a sudden the women, they take off their helmets and it's two women. I don't remember their names at this moment, but famous athletes. And everybody's kind of like, wait a minute. Wow, they did that. And then, of course, they promote the fact that they're wearing secret deodorant. So, how effective do you think this form of advertising is? Personally, I love this kind of advertising. It makes me think. It makes me think about myself. It makes me think that things are possible. So consider your opinion about this as you're understanding the chapter concepts. The levels of extended self help form a person's identity. So individually, we have personal possessions, like we mentioned before, cars and clothing. As a family, it could be something like, where you live or what is contained within your home, the furniture, a piano, a bar, whatever kitchen equipment you have. Community could be the neighborhood you live in, the town that you live in. And then group could be socially part of something like a religious group. You could be part of a fraternity, a sorority, a sports team, having an affiliation with something. So there's these external objects that we consider as part of our extended self. Embodied cognition, states of the mind, states of the body modify states of the mind. Okay, think about that. States of the body modify states of the mind. Okay. And this is much better if we were in person, but I'm going to go through this the best I can with you. So I have a great video here that talks about power posing. And I have the Wonder Woman sign here because it's a Wonder Woman sign. Okay, so typically if you were in a class of mine, and you can do this as I'm talking if you want and see how it makes you feel. Some people are skeptical, but it's you stand up and you put your hands on your hips and you stand up straight and you think about how that makes you feel. And of course, it's supposed to make you feel powerful and confident. So if you watch this video, it just talks about, how we project ourselves. And I think of this in terms of, a lot of what we're doing today, conference calls and Skype and Zoom and things like that, and the way that we come across, even on the phone. And what I always recommend to people is, if you're on a phone call with an employer, you're being interviewed, is to smile a lot, because if you smile, it makes your voice go up a little bit, and it brings out the excitement. Also, standing, like I said, and doing the power pose can also help you with your breathing and your confidence, and your shoulders are back. So check it out. You may be skeptical, but I think it might make you feel a little powerful too. The next area is called enclothed cognition. And this is the symbolic meaning of clothing and how it alters our behavior. So think of a power suit. You're going to wear a good looking suit to go into an interview. It's going to make you feel good. It's called fake it till you make it, as we say. So you don't have it all together. It's okay, but you can look like you have it all together. This is a great video. Again, we discuss it more in class, but I want you to take a look at this on your own. And basically what the video is about is that when we wear something that symbolizes something else, it makes us feel a certain way. So for example, they have someone put on a doctor's coat, okay, a white doctor's coat. What does that make you feel like? Does it make you feel powerful? Does it make you feel smarter? I give the example in class where I bring in a mortar board, which is your graduation cap. And I have a student put that on, and I say, and they technically could put on the whole gown too. What does that make you feel like? Some people feel like, oh my gosh, I feel accomplished. I feel so good. I'm so excited. I put in all this hard work. I'm getting ready to graduate. I'm wearing this gown. It's a rite of passage. Other students put it on and said, oh, I feel kind of scared and nervous because I'm going out into the real world. So, different clothing makes us feel a certain way. So please check this video out. Really interesting about enclothed cognition. Okay, the next area they talk about in the textbook is something called wearable computing. This is kind of bizarre, but it's wear it on your wrist, woven into your clothing, or inserted into your body. So they're talking about this chip, and this could possibly happen. We do it with our pets. We put a chip in them so that if they get lost, we can find them, etc. So they're thinking like, what if we did this in humans? Which sounds a little like far out there, but it's our identification would be in it. So there's no more carrying of ID, passports, credit cards. It would all be in this chip. But currently, they are doing this to help people with Alzheimer's, blood sugar, things like diabetes, sleep disorders, and things like that. So kind of an interesting concept that may happen in our future. Okay, so Nick, here's the part about gender identity that we talked about in the very beginning of this slide deck here. So gender identity is an important component of a consumer's self-concept. People conform to their culture's expectations. And this is true. So here is a same company with two different ads for two different cultures. For Bijan, it's a menswear designer, but you can see in different cultures, what you're wearing and what you can show is very different, and that does affect us quite a bit. Gender differences in socialization, certainly. Gender identity is an important component of our consumer self-concept in the way we socialize. Marketers reinforce this culturally, which can get on my nerves. to be honest. Many societies still expect us to have traditional roles. So one's called the agentic role, and that men are to be assertive and have certain skills. And then there's communal roles, where women are taught to be, they foster relationships, and we're more harmonious with our roles as, mothers, sisters, nieces, etc. So I think your age group is definitely detaching a little bit from these roles, which I think is great. But maybe your parents, your grandparents definitely fall into these kind of roles. Men do this, women do that. Sex typed traits and products. So let's talk more about that and how our society is changing a little bit. So sex type traits are characteristics we stereotypically associate with one gender or the other. So many marketers promote these kinds of products. They take on either masculine or feminine attributes. But many companies are kind of changing things up, which I love to see, due to things like the Me Too movement. Johnny Walker, for instance, introduced Jane Walker, which is kind of a cool thing. Media and gender roles are changing, and we'll talk a little bit about that in this video link I have. But here's a great example. Brawny usually has this big brawny guy, but now they have hashtag strength has no gender. Look around. It's slowly evolving. Companies are trying to do it, and I think it's just better for everybody, because I don't think these stereotypes help anybody. But this is a great example, this video, of how we are socialized. So you may remember some of these videos, some of these companies and commercials from growing up. And it definitely shows how, like, girls are introduced to dolls and playhouses, and then boys are introduced to cars and trucks, and the different colors they use, and the different music, and being assertive and being calm, and, like we said, that behavior of communal behavior. So take a look at it. Pretty interesting. As I said, usually show this in class and get a kind of a reaction out of it, that people are laughing because they know it's true. Okay, sexual identity, marketing to men and women. So these are helpful hints of the do's and don'ts. So do rely on social media. Do rely on emotional messaging. Don't gender wash, and avoid stereotypes altogether. Don't shrink it, pink it, or add sparkles. I love that one. Masculinism is our culture's stereotype of the ideal man, of being tough and muscular and aggressive, and they enjoy sports. And the Me Too movement has sparked a new conversation around how men view women. And interesting how certain things have surfaced and come to a head for certain people. Sexual identity is ever evolving. Androgyny, the possession of both masculine and feminine traits. I think one of you, I recently read your field exercise, but I believe, I might be getting this wrong, but you get the idea of it, that Maybelline or CoverGirl, I think it's CoverGirl, hired their first kind of androgynous person, and it's a male that they're selling makeup to. And they have this person in the ad, and it's pretty interesting, but we're seeing more and more of that. I know Ulta promotes products for both male and female. So you see how things are kind of, meshing together and evolving. So marketers, they can open up new markets if they start promoting what they call gender bending products, unisex clothing. There's a company out there called MeUndies you may be aware of, that is doing some what they call gender bending. The lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender consumers, there's more than 10 billion Americans that identify in the LGBTQ area. Increasing marketers are including gay couples in advertising. I have an ad here for Coke. And they're also considering a third gender movement of non-specific, that people do not need to identify what their gender is. But a lot of companies are definitely including more gay couples. I know there's a Campbell's ad, there's an IKEA, was like probably one of the first companies, and this is a Coke ad that I thought was entertaining. I think you'll like this one too. So the way we think about our bodies and the way our culture tells us what we should think is a key component of self-esteem. Body image is a consumer's subjective evaluation of his or her self-concept. So in our society, we have this idea of what beauty is. And an ideal of beauty is a model of appearance. So what is beautiful is good stereotype. Favorable physical features varies from culture to culture. In some cultures, you know, certain things are attractive, and then maybe in our culture, we would say, oh no, we don't like that, or whatever that might be. So I'm going to go through some of these that you identify with. Attractive faces such as high cheekbones or larger eyes, being in good health and being youthful. That could be, you know, our skin looks a certain way, our teeth are white, balance and symmetry, feminine curves and hourglass body shape, strong male features, a six-pack, broad shoulders, hair. Okay, these are all physical features in maybe our society, but other societies don't really think of that as beauty. So body image distortions is another thing when we think about today's ideal female body. Again, we're getting away from that. Recently, for example, Victoria's Secret is going bankrupt and closing stores. They've been on the brink for a while, but COVID-19 kind of, you know, threw them over the edge there. But a lot of it was that they weren't paying attention to women's bodies in our society. They were showing skeletal women that were very small sizes that the average woman couldn't relate to. And that's why they got rid of their I guess they would have their like underwear show that they finally took off the air. But vanity sizing is something that, and body distortions is a real problem. And many companies are getting behind the opposite of that and being successful is what I'm trying to say. So vanity sizing is something that clothing manufacturers do to deliberately make sizes smaller. Because if you know you're a size smaller, you might go to a different store because you know that maybe your size there is like one size smaller. Maybe it's a woman thing. I don't know. Fatism is society's obsession with weight, and plus size women are being featured more and more in advertising, as I was mentioning before. So for reflection, what is considered the ideal beauty among your peers? How does this ideal affect your choices as a consumer? For example, are you buying colored contacts, skin lightening cream, teeth whitening? Do you wear extensions or fake eyelashes? Things like this that are help us to be more attractive, perhaps. So every culture dictates certain types of body decoration or what is called mutilation. So in different societies and different cultures that some of you may be from, different things separate us in groups, and I'm going to go through some of what they are. piercings, tattoos, things like that help us separate group members from non-group members, for instance. It helps place an individual in a social organization with regard to their stage in their life. It places people in gender categories, enhances sex roles identification, indicate desired social conduct, indicates high status or rank. In some places, wearing feathers, for instance, shows what ranking you are within a tribe, for example. Provides us a sense of security, like things like Lucky Charms, that like a rabbit's foot or something that we use, or a worry stone, gives us that sense of security. So all of these different decorations or mutilations or things that we wear have different roles in our society and dictate certain things. Whether you know you do it or not, they do give off a certain vibe. Okay, we have a couple more slides left in chapter 6, but body decoration and mutilation. Body anxiety, are you too large? Are you too small? We have a lot of cosmetic surgery, things like Botox, augmentation. Body decoration and mutilation has different purposes. It could be, piercings, ears, tongue, your belly button, lots of different things. And they mean different things as well. So our last slide, I want you to think about this. And if we were in class, it's a great conversation to have. But do you have a tattoo? And if so, what motivated your decision? And if you don't have one, why don't you? And can you see an influence of culture on your decision to tattoo or not? It seems that many people have tattoos today, all age ranges, whereas if you went back 20, 30 years, people who had tattoos were in gangs, and, it symbolized something that wasn't so positive. Now, if you don't have a tattoo, you're probably someone who stands out in the crowd. So think about it. If you do have one, what influenced you? Sometimes it's a memory. Sometimes it's something you did with friends. Sometimes it's because you overcame a struggle. There's lots of reasons that we mark our bodies. And I would have loved to be in class to talk a little more about it, but think about it on your own and reflect about it and how it relates to the concepts of our class.